The PlayStation 5 name, launch window, controller innovations, 4K 100GB Blu-ray, ray tracing, and UI updates have just been revealed. Watch to find out everything. Hi, how you doing? Welcome. Ever since Mark Cerny gave the interview to Wired back in April about the next generation PlayStation, we've all been starving for more news. Well, now here is a big whopping chunk of meat. Sony's dropped an information bomb via a second interview with Wired's Peter Rubin and the official blog. There's a lot of data to get through, so I will save the deep discussion for another time. Make sure to watch to the end to find out about the DualShock, which has got two amazing new features that level up the controller experience. Now, here is the news. The name has been confirmed as PlayStation 5. PlayStation CEO Jim Ryan said, "It's nice to be able to say it, like a giant burden has been lifted from my shoulders." After 4 numbered consoles, I don't think anyone is going to be surprised by that. Ryan normally comes across in interviews as overly somber, but the way he says it's like a giant burden has been lifted, it makes me think that maybe he's actually got a very dry sense of humour. Holiday 2020 release date. Sony say it will be launching in time for Holiday 2020, which for non-Americans means the Christmas season. PS4 launched in the USA on the 15th of November 2013, so PS5 will probably launch November 2020. PS5 will have hardware ray tracing. Ray tracing is the graphics effect that produces gorgeously realistic lighting by using advanced calculations to draw exactly how it bounces off the environment. It's probably going to be the biggest innovation between current gen graphics and next gen graphics. PS5 system architect Cerny mentioned ray tracing in the first Wired article, but there was some uncertainty as to whether he meant that it would be the less effective software ray tracing option. However, you can put those fears to bed, as Cerny said, there is ray tracing acceleration in the GPU hardware, which I believe is the statement that people were looking for. That's confirmation and an acknowledgement that he doesn't live in a cocoon from the rest of the world, but that he has been paying attention to what people are saying on socials. The faster SSD means more space for storage. Hard disks, which are used for saving and running games, because of the moving parts, can be slow for the processor to access. So what developers do is duplicate key blocks of data multiple times on the hard disk, so a game always has close access to that data. Now, with the introduction of the SSD on the PS5, CPU access to it will be so fast that duplicating data like this won't be necessary anymore, so a game won't take up as much space. Although this benefit will likely be mitigated by the larger file size of next-gen assets. And to ensure this speed benefit is universal, it means game installation will be mandatory for disc users too. PS5 will have a 4K Blu-ray player that uses 100GB disc. The Last of Us Part 2 is such a large game, it will be released on 2 discs, and this adds to the manufacturing cost. Next-gen games will have larger file sizes, so having a larger disc to store a whole game is a cost and environment saving benefit. And sure, you can watch 4K movies on streaming services, but 4K Blu-ray is superior because the image is much less compressed. Customizable game installation. Cerny said, "Rather than treating games like a big block of data, we're allowing finer grained access to the data. Sony is allowing you to choose what parts of a game you can install or uninstall. For example, let's say you've bought the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare game and you want to dive straight into online multiplayer. You can choose to install just that part to your SSD. Or you can install the whole game, then as soon as you've rushed through the campaign, you can free up the space by deleting it." Home screen with live game data. Normally, if you want to know what missions are available to you in game after your last save, you have to boot it up. Cerny doesn't think this serves the player well. He says, "Even though it will be fairly fast to boot games, we don't want the player to have to boot the game, see what's up, boot the game, see what's up." Instead, the home screen will have live data from the multiplayer and single player games you own. Cerny goes on to explain how this will work. Multiplayer game servers will provide the console with a set of joinable activities in real time. Single player games will provide information like what missions you could do and what rewards you might receive for completing them, and all of those choices will be visible in the UI. As a player, you can just jump right into whatever you like. And this sounds like a really cool feature because if you're one of those people like me sometimes who are actively playing multiple games, because from the home screen, you have a choice of what mission across all your games you want to do next. And if there's a multiplayer game that your friends are in, or that has a limited time game mode, raid or battle available, then this will be displayed. The PS5 dev kit design pictures are real. Wired's journalist Peter Rubin played a series of demos using a PS5 dev kit that he said looks a lot like the images from the patent leak. So that funny, quirky, but very industrial looking design is actually the box that developers around the world are using to build PlayStation 5 games. However, Sony wouldn't answer any questions on how that form factor relates to the home console design. The DualShock 5 controller. The new controller hasn't actually been named yet, but given the name of the PS5, it seems quite probable that DualShock 5 will be its name. Cerny allowed journalist Rubin to hold the prototype, which he says looks an awful lot like the PS4's DualShock 4. It uses the now standard USB Type-C cable for charging and playing, so if you play competitive online matches you will get less input lag than from using wireless Bluetooth. There are no major cosmetic changes to the chassis, and there certainly isn't any mention of the analog thumbsticks being offset like on Xbox controllers. There's a little hole on it, but Cerny doesn't say what it's for except to tease, "We'll talk about that another time." This may be a microphone for use with the AI assistant that Sony have patented. Of course, it's likely Sony will release a new PlayStation camera, but that will be an optional extra. By including a microphone in the controller, it means that functionality will be available to every PS5 owner, possibly revealing that Sony think it's integral to the PS5 experience. Sony have also got some big plans for the new controller. Ryan says, "One of our goals with the next generation is to deepen the feeling of immersion when you play games. And we've had the opportunity with our new controller to reimagine how the sense of touch can add to that immersion. And this is going to be enacted with two major innovations." Adaptive triggers. Adaptive triggers are incorporated into the L2 and R2 buttons. Developers can use them in their games to vary the amount of pressure needed to squeeze them in fully. So, sometimes they are easy to push in, whilst other times they require more finger strength. And this will lead to a greater sense of immersion when the trigger pressure imitates an in-game action. For example, pulling the trigger to pull back the string of a bow in-game, with it getting harder to pull the trigger the more you pull back. Or making gun triggers have different pressure levels to replicate different gun types. Haptic feedback. Sony is replacing the old rumble technology. The controller uses highly programmable voice coil actuators in the left and right grips, which enables a more advanced type of force feedback. And Ryan explains the reason for the change. With haptics, you truly feel a broader range of feedback, so crashing into a wall in a race car feels much different than making a tackle on the football field. You can even get a sense of a variety of textures when running through fields of grass or plodding through mud. Rubin played some demos which he said used the haptics and the speaker sound to deliver some astonishing effects. He describes the effect of it all. "I ran a character through a platform level featuring a number of different surfaces, all of which gave distinct and surprisingly immersive tactile experiences. Sand felt slow and sloggy, mud felt slow and soggy. On ice, a high frequency response made the thumbsticks feel really like my character was gliding. Jumping into a pool, I got a sense of the resistance of the water. On a wooden bridge, a bouncy sensation." And playing a PS5 version of Gran Turismo Sport, he said, "Driving on the border between the track and the dirt, I could feel both surfaces." The new components and larger battery capacity make it slightly heavier than the DualShock 4, but still lighter than an Xbox One controller with batteries in it. PS5 controller prototypes have very recently been sent out to developers. There was also a tease of a new PS5 game, Bluepoint Studios' PS5 game. Marco Frush, president of Bluepoint Studios, which has earned a reputation for making top quality remakes of classic games, such as Shadow of the Colossus, revealed his team is working on a PS5 game. He said, "We're working on a big one right now. I'll let you figure out the rest." So, unless it's Resistance Fall of Man, I personally can't think of a PlayStation exclusive that it might be. So if I had to guess, I would say it's a remake of Konami's Metal Gear Solid. Maybe you have a better guess? Now we know more about the PS5. It has hardware ray tracing, 100GB 4K Blu-ray, adaptive triggers, customizable installations, haptic feedback, and a live home screen. That's a lot of information to digest. And Jim Ryan says there's much more to share about the PlayStation 5 in the year ahead. What's so crazy about all of this is that Sony hasn't held a single press conference this year, but through 2 low-key interviews, it has led the next-gen news cycle. I'm genuinely not sure what to think about this drip feeding of information, but it seems to be working in Sony's favour. I just hope that at some point they do have a big reveal event. Now what we really need to know is the power of the CPU and GPU and how that compares to upcoming consoles from their competition. If you found this information useful, tell me by hitting the like button or leaving a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on some of the brilliant next gen and PSVR videos that are in the works. PlayStation 5 is coming. Cheers.